The story begins in a deserted forest where a postman had come to deliver a letter to an old house. Inside the blue house, the mother washes clothes from blood in a basin. The place looks old and neglected, and the postman hears groaning in the cellar. Driven by fear and curiosity, the postman ran to the window, which was covered with wooden planks. He wants to help out whoever is making the noise, when suddenly the one causing the noise drags down the postman into the darkness, and blood splatters. Now the story jumps 30 years ahead. That same forest has now become part of a youth camp, where a few young people have come to overcome their digital addiction. The camp manager introduces the camp to learn new skills and survive the outside without relying on technology. Afterward, the counselor brings out a pouch containing numbers for the campers to group themselves into. Afterward, the counselor introduces herself to Zojia, the gamer, the blondie, Bartek, and Daniel as the group leader. After that, the group ventures to the forest, and the gamer initiates a conversation with Zojia by bringing up her miniature soldier necklace, saying it resembles Terminator. After walking for a while, Jules felt the need to pee and went into the bushes. Paulie is doing his business, and a viscerated deer show up beside him. Frightened, he called everyone over. Guide Asa examined the wounds and guessed that it was the doing of a large carnivorous animal. Meanwhile, Zojia sees a creepy hand sliding into disappearance from a far-off end tree. As the sun began to set, everyone stopped at a spot and started setting up tents. Aniela had no idea how to pitch a tent, so she asked Daniel for help and went to bathe by the riverside. The rest of the group is Zojia opening her canned food, Bartek blowing his inflatable bed, and the counselor assembling the bonfire. As night fell, Miss Isa lit a fire, and everyone sat around it, chatting. The atmosphere was light and relaxed. Suddenly, a tall shadow passed by, startling everyone. Everyone goes quiet when they hear a rustling sound in the bush. So the counselor approaches the bush to check it out, and it turns out it's only a wild fox. However, the mood had now become slightly tense, so everyone went back to their tents. But later that night, Daniel quietly slipped out of his tent and went to the riverside. He smokes until the blondie sits beside him. They firstly chat, then flirt their hormones with one another. The romantic tension leads the blondie to take Daniel's virginity. Daniel and Aniela's chat had come to an end. Aniela, tired, went back to her tent, while Daniel snuggles and uses his hidden phone inside his sleeping mat. He was so absorbed in the conversation that he didn't notice someone slowly approaching him from behind. By the time he sensed it, it was already too late. So it traps Daniel in his sleeping mat, drags him on the ground, and vigorously slams him onto a tree trunk until his bones crack. Daniel died on the spot. The next morning, the guide Isa found out that Daniel was missing. So the counselor asked the group who last saw Daniel last night. The blondie speaks up and shows their location in the lake, where the counselor finds his cigarette butt and a used smelly condom. But the blondie denies it's from her. Meanwhile, Josiah noticed bloodstains on the bark of a tree, called everyone over, but Guide Isaac dismissed it, saying it wasn't blood, but the tree's natural sap, and there was nothing to be afraid of. After returning to the camp, Asa decided that she would go search for Daniel along with Josiah and Yule, but the gamer opposes it, warning everyone about the rules of horror, where splitting up in the mysterious forest is a bad idea. The best way to solve the problem is to call the police. However, the counselor ignores this since they have no phone to call for help. After walking a short distance, they saw an old house. Normally, it would be wrong to enter private property without permission, but out of concern for Daniel, they all went inside. The atmosphere inside the house felt strange, but they didn't find any solid clues. Just then, an old phone started ringing from the basement. Then they opened the trapdoor on the floor, and the repulsive smell of corpses drifts in the air. The counselor descends first, followed by Zojia, and to their shock, below the cellar, they find Daniel's dismembered and bloody corpse. Just as they started climbing back up, they heard footsteps coming from above. Yulik, terrified, ran toward the stairs, while Josiah and Isa remained in the basement. Eventually, all three hid downstairs, while the three of them watch as heavy footsteps tread toward the trapdoor. The gamer resists the urge to vomit due to the corpse smell. The trapdoor opens, and the counselor quickly breaks open the barred woods on the cellar window. Zojia goes out first, then she helped Yulik. However, the counselor chooses to stay behind upon hearing Daniel's phone ring in his pocket. Unfortunately, the giant mutant already reaches the basement, and the counselor braves up by facing the mutant's ugly muscles alone. Then horrifying screams echoed from the basement. Her decapitated head flies into the feet of Zojia and the gamer. In horror, the two campers escape from the house, and they rest midway in the forest. Meanwhile, Barack and Aniela were still sitting near the camp, chatting about life. They had no idea about the chaos Josiah was facing until the second mutant twin, who's wearing a plaid shirt, skewers the blondie's head in a branch. In shock, Bartek backs off and dashes deep into the forest, glancing behind him to see if the second twin follows. After a long run, he ends up in the church, where he met a priest. In panic, he told the priest everything, but the priest assumed Barack was under the influence of some drug. The priest listens to Bartek's story about the killings and then offers to call for help with his cell phone and landline, but he lies, saying there's no reception. The priest gave him some water and tried to calm him down, but just then, the church's telephone rang. Barack looked at it startled, and then everything went dark. Bartek wakes up from unconsciousness and finds the priest staring at him with a mocking smile on his face. It turns out the priest confesses how he hates Bartek for being gay. Just as he was about to reach Bante, a loud noise echoed outside the church. He became alert and went out to check, only to find that the old wood-cutting machine had turned on by itself. The priest checks the surroundings, and behind him is the second twin. It lifts the priest off the ground, digs his massive thumbs into the priest's eyes, and blood drips down his cheeks. Next, the second twin feeds the priest's body into the wood chipper with every left bit. Blood and ground innards spew out from the machine, flooding the greenery grass in red. Meanwhile, Bartek managed to free himself from the ropes. As soon as he peeked out the window, his face turned pale with fear, so he hides behind the confession box, but the second twin still spots him. On the other side, Josiah and Jules barely escaped the creature and managed to reach an old bungalow far away. An old man opened the door. At first, they initially asked for a phone to call the police, but Hunter tells them he has no telephone. Instead, he shares the history of the twins, which surprised Zosha that there are two killers. About 30 years ago, a single mother came to live in a wooden house in this forest with her two sons. One day, while the two children were playing in the forest, they suddenly heard a loud noise from the sky. Something heavy crashed onto the ground, creating a crater. It was a meteorite, which the two brothers brought back home. At night, a black buoy fluid oozed from the rock, traveled and infiltrated the twins' bodies, which turned them into carnivorous, mutated, and deformed beings. The mother woke up in horror upon seeing her sons eating their dog in the basement. Terrified by this sight, the mother locked the children in the basement from that day on and started sending food down every day. Time passed, and gradually the mother's mental state also began to deteriorate. After a bit of flashback from the hunter, Zosha suggests getting help, but the hunter and the gamer want to stay in the house first. However, Zosha believes it's time to act, so she and the gamer decide to return to the blue house, trying to retrieve Daniel's phone. They both reach the hut. At that moment, the creature was inside. Zulek entered first as bait so that Josiah could sneak in. He ran outside and started shouting loudly, "Come out! I'm going to teach you a lesson." As soon as he screamed, the terrifying creature came out, and Josiah quickly slipped inside the hut. She managed to find the mobile phone, but just then, the creature returned inside. The first twin approaches Zosha and lifts her in the air. It's about to kill her when the gamer suddenly appears from behind and impales the pocket knife into its side. The first twin tosses away Zosha and faces the gamer. It draws close to the gamer's face, bites his tongue, and rips it off his face without pain. She opens her eyes and finds herself back in the same basement, chained with iron shackles. Beside her is the gamer, holding onto his little energy left. Wanting to escape together, Zosha uses Daniel's dismembered hand to scan his fingerprints onto the phone. She's about to call for help, but the phone dies from a low battery. Now Josiah was completely broken when Jewel, who was almost drowned, pleaded with her to free her from the pain. Josiah didn't want to, but seeing Jewel's condition, she was compelled. She picked up a dagger lying nearby and ended freeing. Meanwhile, the mutated twins are upstairs, where the first twin cleans his side wound from the pocket knife, while the second twin goes outside with its axe. Downstairs, Josiah used the dagger to cut her chains and freed herself. But just as she was about to leave, she looked at Jewel and made a big decision. She grabs the machete under the table in the basement and quietly ascends upstairs through the trapdoor. The first twin sleeps on the bed, and Zosha repeatedly stabs her machete onto its chest. Then she immediately ran away from there. On the other side, a village policeman was spending time in the forest with a female friend. As soon as the woman left, the policeman started relaxing in his jeep. Suddenly, Josiah came running. On the other hand, with a shotgun on hand, the hunter patiently waits for one of the twins to enter his house. When the floor on his porch creaks, he shoots the door, but only to see Bartek gasping as blood chokes him to death. The movie ends with Zojia arriving at the main road where she finds a police officer and his car parked on the street. She reports everything while crying and gasping for breath after her sprint. When the police heard the full story, they quickly started the vehicle and set out with Josiah. But after going a little distance, their Jeep collided with something. The police got out to see what had happened. Despite Zojia's continuous warnings, the police officer still goes out and checks it's dead. But when he turns around, the second twin stands and slices the police officer's body into two in an instant. In horror, Zojia breaks the backseat's window open and drives the police car. Meanwhile, the creature climbed onto the vehicle and, holding a large hammer, smashed it against the windshield with great force. The engine finally roared to life. Josiah slammed the accelerator and threw the creature off. She wants to escape, but bravery manifests onto her. So she manages to kill the second twin by running over it numerous times until it turns to be dead meat. At last, she escaped from that terrifying forest. Meanwhile, police cars surround the blue house. But unfortunately, the first mutant twin survives Zojia's stabs.